Well, the more value we can provide our clients, the more likely we are to achieve thought leader status. And also it ripples, because if I help somebody do things, and whether I sent them a podcast or whether I had a conversation with them, however they got into my world, then they're more likely to talk about me, subscribe, listen more, tell more people about me because of that.
Welcome to the 4 a.m. Report. Let's face it, we all have to market. Large or little, it's harder than ever to stand out in a cluttered space of one-size-fits-all and copycat marketing moves. Welcome to the 4 a.m. Report, a micro-podcast that brings you valuable conversations with people on the marketing dilemmas keeping them up at night. Here are your hosts, contrarian marketers and creative clutter cutters, Susan Diaz and Will Lamont.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 4 a.m. Report. Today, we have a return guest talking to us today, Susan. I feel like we're on a roll now. We're bringing back some of our favorites. So today we have our friend Wendy Brookhouse coming back to talk to us about something that business owners, founders, a lot of us struggle with. We know we have to do this. We want to do this. We want to reach our target audience and be seen as that thought leader, that expert in our industry. But easier said than done. So many barriers to that. And we thought we would bring Wendy on to talk about this, Susan.
This is one of those things. I think thought leadership is cool again, and people are using that word a whole lot, like we were saying in the green room. But at the core of it, it's just showing up and being visible for your expertise and being able to do it in a consistent, thoughtful, and in a way at the bottom of it all that does contribute to your business, like which brings you targets, brings you sort of like, revenue from the right sort of prospects. So we have with us Wendy Brookhouse. Wendy, welcome.
I'm so excited to be back, you guys. It's been forever.
Yes, and it's also nice to be not talking right in the middle of a crisis, Wendy, because last time we talked, we were like, let's talk to people about how to manage their money this instant. And this time we're talking about thought leadership. But before we get there, the drill, because you've done this a couple of times with us. But we'd like to ask our guests what keeps them up at night. So what's on your mind, friend?
Well, what's on my mind is figuring out how can I achieve my big, hairy, audacious goal, or BHAG, as Collins calls it. So mine is, how can I change 1 million lives by reducing the stress and anxiety they feel around money? Because when they do that, when they take away that spot in their brain that's worried about money, they can now reallocate that and put it on their family, their business, their career, their community. And when you can do that have more positive energy going on things that make a huge difference in your life, we're going to change the world that way. And so that's what keeps me up at night, is figuring out, how do I amplify? How do I build an audience and help piece by piece change somebody's life around money?
Very cool, Wendy. Now let's jump into that's a nice segue into our topic here, because as a small business owner, as a founder, you have to be visible now. People want to know who you are, what you stand for. They want to hear you speak. They buy into you and your personal brand as much as your association with your business. So, like it or not, you've got to open the doors, get out of your closet, and start being heard. So we were going to talk today about something we really believe in as an easy way to take this step, and how it can really spiral into, or spiderweb into, so many other ways of reaching people. So we're going to, of course, we're talking about podcasting, everybody. Susan, you and Wendy were talking, and you had this idea of doing an episode about this specifically. Why don't you set up some context here for us?
Yeah, I think, there's all kinds of things you can do. I think the options, when you start saying, what is my digital marketing plan? It can get overwhelming in a whole bunch of things. And I think in this point in history, in 2021, podcasting is having that moment in the sun, right? It's like it's come back around after 10 years of existing solidly. Every website has podcast on it, pretty much like the way every website had blog on it. And in many ways, it's that Trojan horse. Like almost anyone will come to the table for a chat with you on your podcast, like very big names, detail-oriented experts, introverts even will come chat with you on a podcast. And that just forms a new way of making relationships, right? In the absence of in-person events and fireside chats and all of those other things we relied on. So obviously we are extremely biased about the idea that podcasting is a great little way to get that. It spirals into, like you said there, that Charlotte's Web idea. It spirals into a lot of other content. So you're obviously familiar with this, Wendy. You're a podcaster on multiple levels yourself. So maybe talk a little bit about thought leadership for yourself. Like what does that look like? I mean, how have you systematized it? Where does the podcasting sort of come into it? A little bit of your journey.
Right. So the first time I ever podcasted was with you, Susan, when we did that group of 5 of us talking about concerns around business and things like that. So I think we had a lawyer, a mindset coach, a business coach, a marketer, and me as a financial person in that group. And it was a delightful introduction because what it did is it took a lot of pressure off me. Yes, I had to be able to show up, and yes, I had to be engaged, but I didn't have to do a whole lot of background work to prepare because obviously I'm talking about stuff I already know. So I didn't have to go off and do a whole lot of research, and it was all produced magically somewhere, and then it got launched and I just talked about it. So it was wonderful from that perspective. And then earlier this year, I fell into this opportunity where an existing audience was available for me to do my own podcast. So these were business owners. I love working with business owners. So I ended up saying, I'm going to just turn this into a podcast. And so now I do live podcasting on Friday mornings. And we bring a guest in every week. We talk a bit about their journey, but we also talk about their subject matter expertise. And in many cases, we start talking about their relationship with numbers because we know so many business owners don't necessarily pay attention where they should. So I'm trying to slowly but surely make them realize that numbers are their friends. They should hug them. They should pay attention to them, all those things. And so, but now I've got a new set of issues, right? So now I don't feel like where I'm falling down a little bit is that I'm not promoting it enough. I'm not spending the time to write out show notes or do anything like that. I haven't gotten around to, turning in the episode into a blog post so that I can amplify my messaging and get to more people. What I will say, though, is from the podcasting adventure, it's been so interesting in terms of how people react, because now they're like, I really like your episode XYZ. And you're thinking, somebody listened. That's so cool. And then, I've had people reach out and book appointments with me because something I said or how I did something really appealed to them. So it really is helping amplify my message and getting my web out there a little bigger so that I can touch more lives.
I like, Wendy, that connection right there between your marketing. The podcast is a marketing tool, but also using it as a sales tool, right? It's bridging that gap. And I was joking with Susan earlier this week. I've started saying the phrase, I have a podcast for that I should share with you. Yes. So when having conversations with potential clients or colleagues or things like that, I've found myself saying, the line like, I've got a podcast for that on content auditing. I'm going to send it to you. Or we've got a podcast for that on how to do a podcast. I'm going to send that to you. It's just arming me with some more of those, potential customer nurturing things that I've really been leaning in and using.
Well, the more value we can provide our clients, the more likely we are to achieve thought leader status. And also it ripples, because if I help somebody do things, and whether I sent them a podcast or whether I had a conversation with them, however they got into my world, then they're more likely to talk about me, subscribe, listen more, tell more people about me because of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know what you were saying there, Wendy, about like some of that, the discipline of breaking it down into all of the items, and really honestly the bandwidth, right? I mean, having a system in place for something like that is quite key. At the very least, obviously, when you're doing a podcast, you want to have your show notes because that's the way that it's findable on Spotify or Apple or any one of those things. And then beyond that, the intentions exist for many people that we're going to convert this into blog posts. And if we had $1 for every idea that we wanted to write about,
right, we'd be millionaires already.
So really some of that discipline of converting it into that blog post. And I think often what we were joking about there with the spider's web and, like really extending it out and out, it comes from that snippeting on the one hand, which is that, okay, here's a thoughtful, 30 to 60-minute episode of whatever it might be. Much as we all want to think that people are sitting around listening to all the content we produce, that's not true. They want highlights. I mean, I'm not saying people's attention span is low. They will come with you for the journey. We all listen to long podcasts. But that said, sometimes I want a series of qualifiers. I want to know that you've said 5 smart things in 5 places before I will invest an hour in you or whatever, right? So that's why we often say with the transcript, try your best to like maybe, get that into 1 or 2 small pieces, even if a whole thoughtful long piece is not possible. And for us, I think the podcasting has really made that easy. And even to the point of cleaning up our own way in which we interview. We're like, let's go through this. This is our point of view. And we'll do 3 key points on that point of view. And then we will recap, because that makes it easier for you to write from, right? And
exactly.
And so forth. So, I guess a question for you is, what do you see from, what are your biggest pitfalls? Like what makes it not go how you want it?
I think there's one thing that has helped me work it, because I do it live. I have accountability, right? Just like I had accountability with the Insight group, because we scheduled it and it had to happen because we're putting 5 people together. So, we're going to make that happen, right? Versus by me scheduling it live on Fridays, it's given me that push that I always have to have a guest, right? So that's the other advantage with Insight. I didn't have to go find a guest every week. But anyway, that's another story. But in terms of the pitfalls, I think it's maximizing it as a piece of content, because I know that the interviews I do, there's nuggets of gold in there. Like I interviewed someone a few weeks ago and she talked about learned helplessness. Well, I hadn't heard that term before. And we went and did a deep dive on it because it was such an interesting concept. So, now I want to be able to promote that a little bit more because it's a thing. So how can we help people get value from the language, the things that happened in the podcast? And that's where I think that's where I'm running into barriers, is the time and effort for the next step to take it across the finish line. Because just recording it, editing it, and getting it up on the site is just step 1, really. Of the real building out your web, if you will.
Yeah. And I guess, one of the benefits of when you and Susan did do the panel, five of you coming together, sharing that same target audience, each providing your expertise, was you do kind of hold each other accountable, as you were just talking about accountability, but also you can share the duties that go into producing a podcasting, whether the people on the panel are producing themselves or they work with someone like us who can help produce it. But I think people would, and we've been having some conversations with people about this panel idea, Wendy, and bringing it back. But I think it'd be great if you and Susan can talk about when 5 of you come together. Of course, you're all going to have different opinions. You're going to want to talk about different things. How did you actually decide on your episode topics? How did you coordinate who was going to talk, who was going to lead? Also, with 5 people, there'd be that worry of maybe over talking, because you don't want to spend too much time heavily editing. It's just that's extra work. Yeah. Why don't you guys tell me a little bit about how that all worked?
Well, from my perspective, I feel finding people who share kind of the same values of why they're at the podcast table with you would be important. If someone is there because they want to be a star versus part of an ensemble cast, that's not going to work. I think we were blessed, Susan, you put together an amazing panel of people who all cared about the listener. And who cared that what we were going to do was going to actually give them something that they could use, right? And so I think that's where making sure that everyone has the same values around that is important. And we just decided together, like we would brainstorm, hey, let's talk about here's something I'm hearing. How do you guys feel about this as a topic? And so I feel like we did that. And I also love, Susan, that we batch recorded. Like, oh my goodness, did that save me a ton of time? Like I wasn't trying to find and get set up and put makeup on every day. I had to look good one day a month versus, every Friday. So
that's such a good point that you're talking about there. I think, Will, I would echo a lot of what Wendy said, that batch production in the beginning, I could see a little bit of fear in everyone's eyes, being that we're going to record for 2.5 hours. Will we ever get that done? But once we got there, it was like a machine, like you said, the fit, Wendy. And a lot of that is important, and which is why we get people to apply and match and specifically talk about it. I think the one thing that I'd venture is that, people who adopt this are the early adopters. If you're coming forward to be a part of this sort of an ensemble cast and really want to make that piece work for yourself, I think there's a vibe. You're going to come into it with like some sort of match. That said, if something's a dreadful misfit, if you hate it, you really shouldn't have to. Like, people are like, convince me why podcasting is a great idea. Well, it may not be for you. Like, if you enjoy creating in a group of people, if you enjoy someone keeping you accountable. And I remember we talked in the green room for a second about one of the panelists was really sick on the day that we chose to take pictures together as a group. But she showed up and she's like, I don't care. We said we would do this and we'll do it. And there's power to that, I think. And you sort of come in and amplify. It sounds woo-woo, but you're not just amplifying audiences or like vanity metrics. You're amplifying yourself a little bit by having those people there to share ideas with. So I think that's pretty key.
And one of the other things we talked about in the green room was about an opportunity to collaborate, right? So I did end up collaborating with a couple of the ladies from the Insight, right? So we're building programs together or what have you. And I find that I learned from them just as much as they may have learned from me, because I'm not narrow and deep on what they're narrow and deep on, right? So that was really exciting.
Yeah.
And really, for me, what I'm loving hearing too is I can imagine the bottom line obviously is the end goal here for everyone, but it's that Wendy and Susan and Andrea all might have had similar, some overlap of audience, but you each are bringing new audience to all of the other members. Yeah. And basically by being part of this panel with them, you're endorsing these other experts. Yes. By just being part of the panel to your audience. To me, it's just like, Wendy, we've used this term a few times, but you're the one that brought this term to us in the green room. It's that spider web effect, right? It's, and we were joking about, because we used the metaphor of the panel as The View with Barbara Walters putting together that first panel of women for daytime TV. And then you gave us the Charlotte's Web metaphor. And now we're thinking of writing a blog post about when The View meets Charlotte's Web, the magic can happen. Yeah.
And speaking of the enhanced reach, like I mentioned, I had an appointment. Well, this week I had a Zoom conversation with a lady in Edmonton, because someone she knew had seen one of my podcasts and said, oh, you should listen to that. She listened to it and then she reached out to me, and now who knows what's going to happen, because we were like, oh my God, you're super cool. No, you're super cool. What can we do? So it was just, how would I have ever met her any other way? Mm-hmm. There is no other way that I would have met that woman. That is so cool.
Yeah, it really is one of those ways to sort of cut clutter. And when people are like, oh, podcasts are a bubble and it'll burst, I'm like, no, really, really not. Because we have 50 million YouTube channels and 500 million blogs. And those things are still in existence and will continue to be for many, many years. So starting to look at podcasting as a way to cut clutter. It's a tool. It's a very effective tool in a strategic marketing plan.
And it's a medium. It's a medium to get out information. Mm-hmm. How many books are there? But people still write books, right? Yeah. So it's about, and you write a book and then you promote the book. Well, if you had 5 co-authors and they're all promoting the book as well, you're going to get more people reading the book. And that, I think, is where you guys are going with the cohort, which I love.
And you know what? Yeah. The thing too that I love about podcasting is I find it so much easier to get on with Susan for 20 minutes. We talk out a topic, pull that transcript. It becomes a blog. As we talked about this, spinning off the different formats in different mediums. But as a starting point for ideation, talking it out and getting the transcript, I find is the best way to start when it comes to content creation. So to me, it's just, we joked about how starting our podcast really became the content creation gift that just keeps on giving. So yeah.
It takes away that blank page sort of fear, I think. Like, you're not going to sit there and wonder, how's this going to go? What do I say? What's the structure? So that's something that works for me.
Absolutely. Well, and if you're doing something that needs messages, if you're doing good work, which a lot of us are, how do we let more people know about it?
Right.
Yeah. Consistently, right? Like that engine
Yeah.
is what we keep saying. It's like I would be much more flaky than we are right now, because you know how what is that about the shoemaker's children and the shoes? It's always the dregs of your attention that are left over for things like this. And I don't think if we didn't have those podcast spin-off things, that I would at all get any thought leadering done and be like, nope, I'm just going to curl up and die today because I'm tired.
I was kind of using the example earlier with you guys about how every time someone says the word SEO to me, I shut down, because it feels like there's so much work to understand it. And then I feel like, oh, I'm just going to understand it. And then they're going to change it all on me anyway. So, and I think that for some people, podcasting can be easy. And there are a lot of ways you can do it, that you can still get the work done, and knowing yourself so that you find the methodology that works for you, right?
I agree. And at the risk of getting super technical on that SEO thing, I think on an SEO level as well, podcasting is kind of huge, because you've got that regular. What is the number one thing that helps you with your SEO? Detailed publishing, good publishing. And when you've got like a podcast that comes out on your website, fed into your website once a week, and you've got a well-written article about your keywords, that's the kind of back-end thing that nobody can define on SEO that you're doing by doing these things. And then the idea of syndicating content, right? I mean, when 5 people put out the same thing and it's linked between them, there's some good juju to that, without going into the details of the thing.
Yeah, don't go into the details. I'm going to trust you on that.
Wendy just shuts off the Zoom.
I'm sorry. I said SEO too many times.
That's cute to exit.
Okay, Wendy. Wait, Wendy, was this your second time or third time on our podcast?
I think it's our third, Will.
I think
you get a muffin basket coming to you in the mail. Get ready for the muffin basket. That's excellent. So just to recap for everyone again, we were, talking about podcasting, or podcasting in a panel if you are new to podcasting and want to have that collaboration with other like-minded colleagues. Podcasting is a great way to up your digital publishing, to up your thought leadership, to up being seen as an expert, and to expand that network, meet new people, meet new prospects, have new conversations. And especially, we're still, a lot of us stuck at our kitchen table on our laptop. So digitally reaching people in lieu of the in-person is still going to be important for the next while. Susan, do you have anything you'd like to add there before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I think that's the core of it. I think need to stop thinking about this as, how do we not just show up and do it ad hoc? How can you create that engine, that thing that keeps you consistent and helps you amplify? And Wendy, your very wonderful words about that reliable exposure to new audiences on the regular, by virtue of the fact that you're doing it with other people. And that's kind of the big draw. So yeah, if you're thinking about podcasting, a great way to go down that road would be to do it with a group, a panel, a cohort, a mastermind, and see if that works for you. Thank you, Wendy, for joining us.
Oh, wait,
and,
Wendy, Wendy, we got to give you an opportunity. How can people find out more about you?
Oh, absolutely. They can head to blackstarwealth.com. And actually the videos of all my podcasts are there. And also a little bit more about what I do to help people relieve stress and anxiety around money, particularly as business owners, so that they can have more impact in the world.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. Thanks for being third time's the charm. This one was awesome.
Woo!
Thank you.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're losing sleep over a marketing-related problem, let us know. Drop us a line at cp.digital. Sweet dreams. Well, hopefully.